Welcome to the People of Nature podcast. Today we have with us Ishita Mathur, who is a PhD student in Natural Resource Management from Guru Gobind Singh, Indraprastha University, Delhi. Welcome, Ishita, to our show. Ishita, let me introduce you to our audience. Ishita works as a PhD scholar researching the agroecological transformations in the biodiverse Northeast Indian landscape, focusing on adaptation and adoption of sustainable agroforestry practices by the indigenous tribal communities. She has completed her master's in environmental management from Guru Gobind Singh Indraprastha University, Delhi. Ishida has worked for a short period on assessing human-elephant conflict, mitigation strategies, and testing efficacy of early warning systems through camera trap data. Her present work involves use of remote sensing and GIS techniques for mapping shifting cultivation systems, agroforestry, and community engagement in natural resource management. Apart from being a PhD scholar, Ishita is also trained in Hindustani classical music, vocal. So today we have a versatile personality in the studio. Welcome once again, Ishita, to our show.
Hi, thank you so much for having me here.
So thanks, Ishita, for joining us today for this discussion. So we never had a person who is working in agroecology specifically. So I think you will really add a lot of value to our podcast. So Ishita, I'm going to narrate, some questions, and then we'll go like question answer kind of a format. So since you are
Okay.
working in the field of agroecology and you already completed a master's in environmental management, so we would like to know, Ishita, what inspired you to pursue a career in conservation and agroforestry specifically?
I'll be really honest. I really never thought of getting into conservation or, this field of study. But I've
Mhm.
always been interested in animal behavior and biology in general. So I chose
Okay.
zoology for my graduation from Delhi University, and then I wanted to pursue a master's in wildlife biology. But I didn't because my family was really hesitant in sending me for such a field oriented course. So I
Mhm.
decided on environmental sciences, which was a multidisciplinary course with experiments as well as field visits, thinking that I will get a taste of what goes on in conservation related research.
Okay.
That was when I did my little project on human elephant conflict, and I was in
Okay.
awe after that because
Okay.
I loved how I could contribute to that field. And
Mhm.
so I decided on going for my PhD then. And my current supervisor at that time shared with me about the kind of work going on in Tripura,
Okay.
which was basically about the tribal communities changing their ways from traditional
Mhm.
practices to agroforestry. So,
Yeah.
and even though it wasn't really related to my previous work, I was really
Mhm.
intrigued about that area, and Northeast seemed like a great place to work in. So I
Yeah.
wanted to, experience that culture and that
Mhm.
area. And so I joined the course, and
Okay.
here I am now in my final year, working with
Okay.
some very dedicated people and
Mhm.
having a supervisor like Professor Bhattacharya for my PhD has really inspired me to choose this line of work and put in the effort required.
Right. So I suppose it was more like a trial and error kind of a thing, and I guess now you're here. So I
Yes,
mean,
yes, yeah, you can say that,
that's
yeah.
okay. So we are going to discuss about your current work definitely, about the work that you have done earlier. So we would like to know more
Hmm.
also about that. So
Okay,
about your current project, like some of the significant research projects for your PhD that you have been doing, and the
right,
previous project that you mentioned, like shifting cultivation, transition from traditional farming practices to sustainable agroforestry in Tripura.
right,
So,
right.
about these themes, can you tell us briefly?
Yes. Actually, my PhD work involves studying the agricultural transformations in the state
Mhm.
of Tripura, as I said. I am looking at how the traditional agricultural practices like shifting cultivation are now transitioning to settled form of like homesteads and cash crop
Mhm.
plantations.
Okay.
So, to give you the context, in the late 1990s, Tripura was under a lot of riots and insurgency, and the government
Mhm.
initiated a resettlement program over there for the hardcore Jumias or the shifting
Okay.
cultivators. Uh, so, Jumias is what they're called in Northeast India. So, because they were the ones who were most prone to be made part forcibly of the insurgent groups and, faced several safety issues as they were living deep inside the forest. So, the goal was also to wean them off the practice of Zoom through this activity, like many other rehabilitation programs that happened in the state from time to time. So, this program was initiated after the year 2000, and several such villages were formed where these Jomias were resettled, and they were provided access to the government benefit schemes related to education, safety, healthcare, and a lot of
Mhm.
different agroforestry plantations, which included horticulture plantations and cash crop plantations, majorly concerning areca nut and rubber. So it has been more than 20 years now since that program was initiated, and we are kind of looking at how it has impacted the socioeconomic status, first of all, of these communities, how it has
Okay.
changed, and
Okay.
how it has impacted the agricultural activities and its effect on the forest landscape of the
Mhm.
region, because
Right.
shifting cultivation is often associated with forest degradation and fragmentation. So that is also one aspect we're looking at.
Right.
And because the practice is also a very culturally integral part of the communities,
Mhm.
so we are also looking at how after relocation through the government interventions, how have they adopted the different agroforestry practices, how has that
Mhm.
diversified their livelihood opportunities, and
Right.
because now they have also access to markets and roads and banks and
Mhm.
a lot
Yeah.
of schemes like Manrega, and they
Correct.
also have access to individual forest right
Yeah.
after the enactment of the FRA 2006. So,
Mhm.
yeah, so
Yeah.
we're looking at different aspects, including socioeconomic, environmental aspects, soil
Mhm.
quality, afforestation, then also maybe the impact of the FRA Act. And we're
Yeah.
using GIS and remote sensing
Okay.
for forest landscape study, and
Mhm.
to see the land use dynamics, change in the land
Yeah.
use dynamics. So in a in a nutshell, I think this is pretty much what my work is about,
Mhm.
and
Okay.
yeah, that is what I'm
Yeah. Great.
compiling right now.
So it's a really multi-layered study that you are doing, not just
Yeah,
focusing on community, but also looking at how the landscape had changed, how the people perception have changed, their lifestyles have changed. So I think it's a really remarkable work. We need such kind of more research in conservation domain, because it
hmm,
really adds a lot of value, and you can have like multiple lenses to look at conservation as such, as the word suggests.
right,
So that's great,
yeah,
Ishita. We got to know a lot of things, from you already in such a short period of time. But our audience is also interested in knowing about that small project that you mentioned about working on human-elephant conflict. So
right,
I guess in Terai Arc landscape you worked on it,
yes,
and in,
yes.
in that in that particular landscape it's a prominent issue. So could you share your experiences and insights, from this particular project?
So this project actually happened in 2017, and I was working in the Terayak landscape near the Corbett
Okay.
Tiger Reserve, and this was
Mhm.
kind of my first dabble with field work, and it was mostly
Okay.
solo, so it was quite challenging and also rewarding at the end of it. And I was
Oh.
in my 20s at that time, and was reporting to WWF Haldwani field office
Okay.
regarding this human wildlife conflict mitigation measures. So I was there for a short duration, but I was really fortunate that the a new early warning system was being tested at that time, and I
Mm-hmm.
got to report the findings of that system in its pilot phase, and that really taught me a lot because there was
Yeah.
interaction with the villagers, and I was informed that of the various physical, chemical, and plant based deterrents that they've been using
Mm-hmm.
to ward off the animals that were visiting their crop fields. And so there was trenches, there were fences, solar powered electricity also. Then there was use of fire, chili plantation, and all these things. So
Yeah.
for my project, we had installed camera traps
Yeah.
at the strategic points in the fringe between the fields and the forest to capture the movement as well as the reactions of the visiting animals to the early warning system that was being tested. So
Mm-hmm.
it could be seen how different animals like cheetal or nilgai and majorly elephants were
Mm-hmm.
reacting to the system. And at times we also got leopards in some of the footage. And so we were
Okay.
looking at how they're reacting to the sound and light of the early warning system. There were two
Mm-hmm.
mechanisms, and also at the learning curve that the animals were showing in response to it.
Okay.
So, yeah, it was really interesting to note how the elephants, quickly learned how to dodge
Mhm.
and sometimes even escape the system because they're
Yeah.
quick learners in that way. So, I mean, at the end of the study, we saw that the features of the
Mm-hmm.
system should keep on changing so as to, preserve the shock value of the system and to keep on deterring
Mm-hmm.
the incoming animals. And also in the long term, I feel that the causes, the real causes, the environmental causes for the greater incidence of elephants and even other herbivores, that should
Mm-hmm.
be focused on and that should be like
Very.
resolved in the long term.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's a
Yeah.
really interesting piece of work indeed, and a lot of learnings. And animal behavior is like really exciting and interesting topic altogether. So there's, I
Yes.
think, a lot more to for us to understand, because we always think from the perspective of humans. So it's really, something uh, full of mystery. That particular field of sciences. So great,
Yeah. Right.
great Ishita. So thanks a lot for sharing with us. So Ishita, coming to the next question, your work involves engaging with local communities. This is what we are, trying to understand now, and it's, I think it's very crucial for successful conservation wherever you are working. So how have you
Right.
involved the indigenous tribal communities in your agroforestry projects, and what impact? So what do you think is the impact of your work on this?
Yeah. So you asked about the local communities and their
Yeah.
involvement. So I very much believe that the conservation initiatives and the solutions that we try to come up with, when originating from the ground up, have a better probability of being successful and
Yeah.
even sustainable than the other way around. So when I was visiting the field in Tripura, when I was starting my work there with the tribal communities, I made it a point that I didn't want to start my data
Mhm.
collection right away. And I wanted
Yeah.
to first understand how they look at the problem statement that I
Mhm.
had kind of formulated sitting back in Delhi. And based
Yeah.
on that, I mean, I was formulating the problem statement based on my literature review and some of the recently concluded bilateral projects in the area that were happening. So
Mhm.
that is what I did. I went there and talked with the people, and that is when I learned that agroforestry as a concept wasn't really new to them, and
Yeah.
therefore talking about homesteads or even managing trees and livestock in their farms was
Mhm.
easier. So then I
Okay.
discussed with them the different kinds of benefits of agroforestry, which was kind of not directly known to them.
Mm-hmm.
So things like soil quality or the effect on soil stability, the kind of
Mm-hmm.
economic returns you can have from growing
Right.
trees along with
Right.
crops,
Right.
or how they build resilience, and try to
Yeah.
learn what benefits they are already experiencing with the combinations that they grow.
Mm,
So
yeah.
yeah, so we were trying to, find a best fit combination suitable for the region and the terrain, which would further
Okay.
encourage the adoption of agroforestry. So some farmers have definitely unlocked the financial benefits of growing
Mm-hmm.
cash crop plantations like Erica nut and rubber, as I was mentioning, because they are the
Yeah.
most. So rubber is actually now, I mean, Tripura is the second after Kerala, is the biggest
Oh.
producer of rubber. So,
Oh, I see.
so this has really helped them build the financial resilience, and
Correct. Correct.
other
Yeah.
farmers are also trying to follow their suit. And for systems to truly work in their favor as well as for the environment, I think training and awareness is a big part, and that is to be
Mhm.
continued, because right now at this stage of the projects, the initiative of giving plantations has stopped. So now they have a decision to make on what kind of combinations they want to put up in their farms. So for that, I
Yeah.
think this awareness of benefits and co-benefits of different species is really required for, making
Mhm.
their farms more diverse and also have
Yeah.
long-term benefits.
Yeah. I mean, that's a good observation indeed, Ishita. So there's a lot more, I guess, for us to explore and understand. And I think people
Right.
also has to understand the value of the landscape to come together and collaborate and work. So
Mhm.
it definitely is a very interesting topic, and perhaps a lot of other, a lot of more work is needed in this particular domain. And when you are working in the field, you're talking to the people, I think that really, builds a rapport. And then if you're adding value to what they are doing, they will really trust
Mm.
you. So that's a good experience that you shared with us, Ishita. So again, thanks a lot for that. So Ishita, you mentioned in your PhD work you are relying on the remote sensing GIS methods for mapping cultivation systems. So how exactly this
Yeah.
works out? How this integrating technology, uh, influenced your research, or maybe you can add, you can tell us more about what exactly you do with remote sensing and GIS.
Yes. So I have used GIS and remote sensing for mapping shifting cultivation systems.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm also trying to do suitability analysis for
Okay.
agroforestry in that area. So
Okay.
land use and land cover maps have been around for quite some time now.
Mm-hmm.
Majorly, people use Landsat data for that, which I have also
Mm-hmm.
used for time series analysis. But
Mm-hmm.
I must tell you that mapping shifting cultivation systems accurately and classifying them as a separate class is quite a
Mm-hmm.
tedious task because of the
Okay.
dynamic nature of the system of farming. Because you get a
Yeah. Yeah.
different land cover of the shifting cultivation plot over
Correct. Correct. Yeah.
different cover. So according to the type of system being underway.
Mm-hmm.
One
Yeah.
thing to delineate these areas, is such a big problem. In fact, I even had to publish a paper because I studied so many methods because I was trying to decide which method I wanted to
Mm-hmm.
adopt for my study. So I have a paper on the literature review of shifting cultivation mapping. So because I was so
Mm-hmm.
shaken with the so many methods that different researchers have used in different areas. So
Yeah.
too, they classify in different kind of classes. Somewhere it is wasteland, somewhere it's fallow, somewhere it's
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
agriculture, and so on.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, I eventually narrowed down to a method, And I
Mm-hmm.
feel GIS plays such a big role in characterizing and finding trends in the landscapes,
Correct.
especially for areas like Northeast,
Yeah.
where it's very tough. You cannot go to every part of that area and have
Yes.
your
Yes. Indeed.
GPS. So,
Yeah.
and so that is for shifting cultivation, and for
Mm-hmm.
agroforestry also. Several methods are in place for
Mm-hmm.
finding the total area under agroforestry, or the changes over time, or maybe
Mm-hmm.
suitability of the area based on several different parameters like
Yeah.
soil, slope, even economic and environmental factors have been included in
Mm-hmm.
some studies. So
Correct. Correct.
then there's also prediction modeling following
Mm.
various methods for maybe
Yeah.
sequestration capacity. That is also one of the things that I'm doing. So yeah, a lot of research is ongoing, and
Mm-hmm.
I feel with the LIS4 data becoming
Mm-hmm.
publicly available now,
Yeah.
and it has a great resolution. It's a high resolution sensor,
Yeah.
with 5.8 meters. I think more opportunities have really, opened up, and I think better mapping and
Yeah.
modeling methods can now be created in the future, and we will have
Yeah. Yeah.
better estimation of such systems.
Yeah, definitely. So remote sensing GIS is something that I guess almost all the labs across India are using. At least for the basic mapping, everyone uses that. And with the Google Earth
Yes,
available, it's so handy that you can simply map simple small areas, and with the drone mapping now coming up, so
right, right,
people are also relying on that. So I think it's a good practice to also integrate technology with your research and make use of it because it's available, right? So
exactly,
yeah, I mean, that's a good one. So
right.
Ishita, since you're mentioning about shifting cultivation, according to you, how to balance the needs for agricultural development with conservation efforts, especially in areas like ecologically sensitive areas like the Northeast. So, what is your take on this?
So I feel that first of all, this is a very important question, and at the same time, a very difficult question to answer also, because
Thank you.
development and conservation have always been on crossroads, and it does get tricky to balance both, especially for a developing nation like ours, which is also one of the fastest growing economies in the world, and while also being a mega diverse country. So it does get tricky in the country. And Northeast India, especially, is a biodiversity hotspot, and therefore, things get trickier, especially because of the terrain and inaccessibility to some areas. So there are several programs being initiated in the Northeast to connect it to the rest of the country and develop the area. And many times we construct the roads, for example, and the highways, and then we realize the impact it has on the surrounding environment. So I think firstly, a proactive approach in developmental projects is required. And for example, in Tripura only, access to roads and market has really changed the game for the farmers who are involved in horticulture and cash crop plantations like
Hmm.
arecanut, rubber, even jackfruit, and a variety of pineapple and mango.
Hmm.
So now manufacturing and processing industries have not really taken off that much in the state due to the terrain and the
Right.
transportation problems they're facing. So if that part
Okay.
of the equation is solved for
Hmm.
processing, for value addition for the produce, I think this can be taken up, and the products can be sold at a larger scale, which will really increase the revenue for the state,
Hmm.
and also encourage the agroforestry farms in the state overall.
Right. Right.
So
Yeah.
I think that projects should be initiated, but definitely I think this should also combine traditional knowledge in the
Yeah.
core of it, and can only happen because of the policy support, and
Hmm.
when the people have the capacity to do, to kind of process it in a way and add value to in a way that it can be sold in a larger market. So these are the, I
Yeah.
think, the point that we looked at when scaling up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with you that traditional knowledge has to be taken into consideration, especially when we are dealing with agricultural development with conservation efforts in ecologically sensitive areas. So,
Yeah.
moving forward, Ishita, we know that you are near completion of your PhD. So it's a very exciting time actually, when you are almost finishing your PhD. A lot of things perhaps are uncertain or perhaps you have planned. So it's a very different phase altogether in in your life. So since you are at that stage, I would like to know what are your future goals in the field of conservation and agroforestry.
Right. So yeah, it is an interesting time. It's also a
Mhm.
nerve-wracking time, a bit. So honestly, I'm actually still conflicted between going
Mhm.
for lecturership or in academia, or continue
Mhm.
my work in Northeast India, because
Right.
during my current work also, I became aware of the increasing human elephant incidents. So when I was going to the field
Okay.
and talking to the forest department officials, so I came to know
Mhm.
about the human elephant conflict going on in Kovai and Gomti districts in
Mhm.
Tripura.
Right.
So I think if I have to, continue with my work in Northeast and in Tripura especially, I would really
Mhm.
maybe love to dive into this problem and probably study how agricultural practices in that area are linked with the conflict, taking my current
Mhm.
knowledge into that problem, and also
Right.
the efficacy of different mitigation measures that are currently being practiced. So I mean,
Mhm.
it is being said, since I'm following this topic, so it is being said that the construction of a national highway is being held responsible for the increased
Mhm.
incidents. So yeah,
Okay.
I mean, I think this is a research problem that I would like to dive in if I continue
Right.
my research. But yeah, for now, I'm really concentrating on my thesis.
Yeah, I can understand. But anyway, I mean, congratulations. So far, you have covered a lot, and all the best for your future career. So I guess wherever you will be, you'll be doing the right thing, and you'll be doing good. So all the very
Thank you
best
so
for that.
much.
So we are now nearing to the end of our this interesting discussion we had. Um, so Ishita, we would like to know, since you have been working in Northeast area, along with tribal communities, along with a lot of different stakeholders, what challenges have you faced as a woman working in conservation?
Uh, so, as a woman working in the field, whether it was during my conflict study or
Mhm.
right now in the Northeast, I faced different challenges at different times. And I
Right.
think one common thing that comes up is that I have usually visited the field alone. Because as a PhD
Okay.
scholar, as a PhD
Mhm.
researcher, you have to, do the field visits alone, and
Yeah.
it gets a bit hard for the locals to take that
Hmm.
someone is doing the rounds of an area, and it's hard
Correct.
for them to
Correct.
take me seriously at times. So,
Yeah.
and then they might not up to you because of that, and might not share their experiences very truthfully. And
Right.
but then you have to work on it, and eventually you make more visits and try to build trust by spending more time with them and explaining what you're
Mhm.
trying to do. But there is
Right.
also cost associated with carrying a companion with you at all times. So I mean,
Yeah.
especially if you don't particularly feel comfortable. So yeah, I
Hmm.
mean, there are also safety issues in some places. Then maybe in some places sanitary facilities are not
Yeah.
as accessible when you're remotely working, or deep in the forest area.
Yeah.
And sometimes you need to stay at accommodations. I have to stay at accommodations farther from the nearest, city bustling area.
Mhm.
And this
Right.
actually happened with me Northeast once. I remember
Okay.
I was staying one night at a forest guest house, which was a
Mhm.
few kilometers away from the nearest house
Okay.
or even the market. And it was the
Oh.
only room, and there was no caretaker also there. So in the evening,
Mhm.
everyone left for their own houses,
Mhm.
and I was
Right.
staying for the night. And somehow
Okay.
the main door wouldn't close properly.
Oh
So
my God.
and I couldn't find anyone around because everybody had gone, and the phone network,
Mhm.
since it was a forest guest house, was also
Yeah.
very weak, and I couldn't reach
Mhm.
to anyone, and my family couldn't reach me. So it was such a
Mhm.
scary night. I mean, I remember that night to this day.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean that is one of the experiences, and being a woman, I mean, I think your family also worries more when you go to remote places. And,
Mhm.
this incident also made them even more concerned. So, yeah,
Right.
this is also one of the big ones, big challenges. And yeah, these are the things that I've faced. Yeah.
Yeah. So we hear a lot of common things, as what you mentioned. A lot of other speakers also mentioned similar, problems. So it's I think there are some common themes which emerge when you're working in the conservation. Perhaps for women,
Right.
I guess it's I don't know. I mean, it might be slightly more difficult, but there are some
Hmm.
common themes also for male researchers working in the field, and there are some common themes that we can figure out.
Right.
So, Ishita, so my final question to you is: do you have any message for our audience?
Okay, so I think my message for the audience listening to this conversation, for the students who are interested in conservation, I would really say that it's a very interesting field, and you learn each day you step out in the field. So you really have to, keep being curious and also to keep being passionate, because, and always remember why you started, because
Yeah.
at times it can get too much.
Mhm.
And for people who care for nature and the planet in general, I would say that each one of us can contribute in our own small ways. You don't necessarily have to be in research for that, and
Mhm.
we really need to talk and engage and educate ourselves through
Yeah.
discussions surrounding the environmental issues that we're facing. And once I think that is done, it would make sense to adopt the sustainable life choices that
Mhm.
we propagate to the public in general. So yeah. And
Yeah.
also another
Thanks. Thanks.
message for people to keep listening to the conversations here on this channel.
Oh, great, great. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for that. So, Ishita, that was very short, crisp, and I guess wise message that you shared with all of the audience. We really enjoyed this conversation, and thanks a lot for joining us today on this show. Your work is
Thank you.
fantastic.
Thank you so much.
Uh, I'm going to congratulate for having done so much, and I believe that in future you will continue doing conservation, and I will meet you somewhere. I'll see you somewhere, and all the very best for your career. Thanks a lot, Ishita.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me here. Thank you.